So what is it exactly that we're doing here? We're going to pick a genre. We're going to go through each one. We're going to like maybe narrow it down a little more than is warranted. They they tend to bleed into each other, the different genres. But for our purposes, for the purposes of making choices here and there, we're we're going to have to narrow it down. So, in terms of just straight up fiction, and this is realistic drama. Some examples of what I mean by this are To Kill a Mockingbird, Lord of the Flies, Stephen Ambrose's Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. From television, might be Atlanta, Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, and movies. Right? Lean on Me, Marriage Story, and the classic Gran Torino. Later on, if you want to come back to develop some subplots, fiction is where you want to go. That'll help. For crime fiction, what you have here is criminals and their crimes. The main character is a criminal, bad guy. Uh, Not necessarily an anti-hero, but that might work. So, but this is limited to things like the Dexter series, which were books first before the television, and Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. So there's a lot of overlap between this and detective fiction, but the main character in detective fiction is the detective. Um, and I'm going to use that in mystery fiction later on. TV, Ozark, Science of Anarchy, Breaking Bad, obviously, and for movies, things like Pulp Fiction, Scarface, and The Godfather. Horror, where the purpose of the author is to scare you or disturb you, one or the other or both. Scary stories, right? Like The Lottery, Cask of Amontillado, Stephen King's The Stand. American Horror Story for television, Stranger Things, Supernatural. Even though Supernatural isn't maybe entirely serious and scary all the time, it still has more to do with this genre than any other. And then movies like Saw, The Exorcist, The Sixth Sense. You'll have to decide for yourself if slasher movies kind of fit into this. I don't, I'm not sure. Fantasy. Heroes in fantastic settings. Things not real. Science has nothing to do with anything. Dragons aren't going to fly. You have to change the laws of physics, Jim. It's just not going to work. So things like that are going to fit in here. Game of Thrones, there's dragons in that. SpongeBob SquarePants is an example of fantasy. Lord of the Rings, of course, the Avengers, superhero fiction has more to do with fantasy and fits here better than anywhere else, in my opinion. And then stories like Harry Potter and L. Frank Baum's The Oz books, where Dorothy, she ain't in Kansas anymore. Transportation via tornado, that's fantasy. For science fiction, these are stories featuring scientific ideas. Hard science fiction is where the science is really into it. You can actually maybe do the math. The other types are just like, Star Wars. But so TV, like Agents of Shield, Doctor Who, Snowpiercer, Star Trek leans towards hard science fiction, though a lot of people would take issue with that. Star Wars, Pacific Rim, even though the science in Pacific Rim is terrible. Um, Next, we can remember it for you wholesale, which is turned into Blade Runner later on, and Jurassic Park, where the science is actually pretty good. So it runs the gamut. And then historical fiction. This tends to be well-researched stories that explore history, and this is really good stuff. Although no one ever picks it doing this. It's probably the research you have to do. So The Good Lord Bird is a good example. It's even though it probably qualifies as satire, it's well researched. Harriet Tubman did meet John Brown. Frederick Douglass did meet John Brown. Outlander, even though it's a romance, and I'm not sure how carefully researched it fits. 11/22/63 by Stephen King is a very good example of one that kind of it also blends into the horror genre and maybe fantasy as well. MASH, the '70s show, The Tudors. These are all examples of television historical fiction. 12 Years a Slave, Black Klansman, Titanic, well-researched explorations of period in history. It's really one of the best ways to learn about history, according to science. Mystery, solving crimes. The main character is a detective. Conventional, unconventional, a bunch of teenagers, one teenager, a drunk. I don't know. It's a detective. So, The Hound of the Baskervilles, of course, Arthur Conan Doyle. And here we have Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. Again, classic mysteries. Law and Order, Psych. That's, again, not quite serious, but who says it has to be serious as a genre? Sherlock, of course. Gone Girl fits this. Nancy Drew, Scooby-Doo. Yeah. So there you have it. Here are our first choices. Choose wisely.